Hey friends, welcome back to the 𝐚𝐭 Homestead. I'm 𝐚𝐭, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the pros and cons of goats versus cows for your dairy animal. I have now had both. I had a Jersey cow last year that I've shared some experiences with on here, and now I have Nigerian dwarf goats that I'm using for my dairy animal on the homestead. This one right here is in milk, and I have been milking her, and I've just been getting in there so I know what is good, what is bad, and I wanted to share that with you. Last year, I had a dairy cow, a Jersey dairy cow named 𝐚𝐿 that I was using as a milk dairy animal on my homestead. I was so excited. I love raw milk, so I wanted my own source, and I got a cow. The first thing that you need to know about cows versus goats for using as your dairy or your milk source is cows are going to give a lot more milk than goats. I had one dairy cow. She gave me 3 to 6 gallons a day of milk. All right, that is a lot of milk. At most that I am getting from her, I'm getting about a quart a day. If I'm really pushing it, she's starting to slow down a bit because I haven't started to separate her and her baby yet. But there's a huge difference of milk. That's why you will need multiple, depending on what you and your family need for milk, multiple goats. Right now, that's perfect for me. I almost wish I had just a little bit more, but it is way more manageable than 3 to 6 gallons of milk a day. I was drowning in milk. And that may not necessarily be a bad thing, but when you're already pressed for time, it can be a lot to have on your plate. Another thing that I have learned from having goats versus a dairy cow is I feel like goats are more manageable. People may say differently. I've heard when I was researching goats versus a cow for a dairy animal, so many people did not like goats, and that's why I went with a cow first, because I'm like, okay, obviously there must be something. I feel like goats are way more manageable as long as you have proper fencing. They are a bit rough on fences, but so are cows. Right here, I have some 4x4, like just field fencing. I'll show you what I have over there. It's a bit smaller, but they climb on your fences. Hot wires are good. You also have electric netting that you can get for goats and cows. So you just want to have proper fencing. As I'm thinking about it, when I was doing my research of goats versus cows, the number one thing that people complain about with goats was the fencing. I can totally see that if you don't have proper fencing, you're gonna have goats that get out, they're gonna eat your trees, they're gonna go through your garden, and that's gonna be a huge pain. Whereas a cow is easy to maintain. You just need like one string of hot wire, they touch it, they respect it. Goats are a little more tricky. My fencing for my Nigerian dwarfs has been perfect. Let me show you. Here they are grazing, and I just have this fencing right here. They can't get through it. The babies can't get through this. They will climb on it, but it is supported by T-posts, and it has been perfect. She can't get out, and they've been really respectful of it. If you're thinking you're just gonna get goats and have one strand of hot wire, that is gonna be a problem. They're gonna hop out, they're not gonna care. Or if you have really tall grass like I do, the hot fence could ground out. You will want to have fencing set up before you even get your goats. And the smaller panels are going to be better. Honestly, if you just get hog paneling, which is small squares, thick steel, it is going to work perfect for your fencing. If you can rotate graze, even great. That brings me to my next point. Goats, depending on how many you have, aren't going to need as big of an area as a dairy cow. So yes, you can substitute their feed and feed hay and grain and stuff, but the absolute best is to pasture rotate with your cow or your goats. And for me, this small area that I am working with, which used to be the chicken run, is perfect. Could I use this for a dairy cow? It would be good for not very long as compared to goats. So in my opinion, they're easy to graze. They are smaller, more manageable. So when you have to transport the animal, I have been just transporting them in a dog crate, which has been perfect. And compared to a huge dairy cow, I think I said dairy animal earlier, but I meant dairy cow. compared to a huge dairy cow that you're going to need a special trailer for. It's going to be a pain to get them anywhere if you want to take them somewhere to breed them or bring a bull on or something. It is a pain. Whereas your dairy goats, they are small, you can transport them easily. And if you have a buck, which brings me to my first con, bucks smell. So a male goat will really reek up the place because they pee on themselves during, to get the ladies' attention. Cows do have a smell, in my opinion. I feel like goats are cleaner. A male goat is going to reek. So keep that in mind. You might not want to keep the male goat by your house. Your neighbors might complain, but still, I feel like they are way more manageable. I guess you could consider the first con of goats is that they don't give as much milk, but in my opinion, for me personally, that is a pro. So it's going to vary from family to family and what your needs are. Another thing that you may consider a con of their milk is that their milk is homogenized, which means that you're not going to get a fat cream line like you would with cow milk because the fat in the milk would separate. So with Moo, I was able to make so much butter because of all the cream that I was getting from her. But with them, you can make cheese, butter, ice cream are gonna most likely be out of the picture unless you're getting a lot of milk and you have a cream separator, which can be quite expensive. When I was weighing between a cow or goats last year, that was a big thing for me because I was like, I want to make my own butter. I've realized it's not that big of a deal for me personally, and I am so happy with their milk. Another thing about goats is that they are extremely curious. They will, you can just see the curiosity in their face. So they will test your fences, they will want to eat your clothes. Whereas cows are curious, but I feel like goats are going to press the limit a little more than cows are. I am now in my little milking parlor. So I am sitting on my stanchion that I use to milk my goats. Huge pro about milking goats. Way easier than milking a cow. So this is multifold. A cow is a huge animal. Getting them into the stanchion can sometimes be a pain. Whereas I've noticed the goats, simple. I put their grain out, hops up. It will take a little training, obviously with both animals. The one huge one. When a cow, which they will, goes to the restroom while you're milking, it is a ginormous mess. You gotta stop. And their droppings, their manure is different than goat manure. Goat manure is little pellets. The dropping of a cow is a pie, like a pudding pie. And so it gets everywhere. It'll splash on you, splash in the bucket, go in the milk. It is an absolute pain to deal with. Whereas the goats, if they end up going to the restroom while you're milking them, you just wipe away the pellets. There's no mess. And that to me, like I said, is such a huge pro. I hated having to stop and sweep and clean the whole area. And it will happen if you're milking either of your animals. Goats are easier to clean up. Speaking of manure and poo, one con of goats is that they deal with parasites. So there's parasites in the grass. That's why you don't want to graze them on short grass. They are essentially eating where they go to the bathroom. That's why it's so important to rotate graze your animals if possible. So you have to deworm them. But I'm grateful it's simple. You can use conventional methods of deworming. So there's different pharmaceutical things that you can get from your vet, or you can use natural dewormers like I use. I will show you what I use for my goats and has been great. But I said speaking of manure, because you can do little slides of your goat's manure, do a worm count, or you can hire out a place to do a worm count for you if parasites are an issue in your herd. Whereas cows, you're not really going to have to worry about that. There's no maintenance in that area. So that is a con of goats, but a pro for cows, not really having to worry about parasites, but it's super easy to deal with. That was something that was kind of a selling point for me with getting a dairy cow versus goats, because I didn't want to have to deal with that. That kind of made me nervous, but it's not a big deal. Another pro for goats is that their area doesn't have to be super huge. So a cow, because they're a larger animal, they have more requirements, they're gonna need a bigger area. Could I keep my dairy cow in this side of the chicken coop? No. Could I keep them in the chicken run? Kind of. I'd have to do a lot of supplementation, but I built this for my goats. They're happy. They have bedding. I have to keep out mineral and baking soda for them. You have to keep out mineral for your cattle as well. So you just want to make sure that you have the best. But I love this. I love that I could even have more goats in here. So I feel like you get a bigger bang for your buck for the area that you have. This is what I use to deworm or use for parasites in my goats. It's a land of Havilah herbals, and it is made from black walnut, cayenne, all these herbs. And what's so beautiful about this is that you don't have to throw away any of the milk. If you use a pharmaceutical grade parasite dewormer, you will have to throw away the milk. And I'm not a huge fan of pharmaceuticals, so this is absolutely amazing. The goat dairies that I know and have met and have been working with, this is what they use. And they swear by it that it works amazing. I talked a little bit about their milk and their pros and cons in their milk. I have to say, this is my honest opinion, I love goat milk way better than raw cow milk. So the taste is going to vary from animal to animal. So I'm even talking about from goat to goat, cow to cow. I enjoyed my cow's raw milk, but it had a very strong cow flavor. And I've had a lot of raw milk in the area that I live from different cows, and just this strong cow flavor. And everyone talks about a goat flavor. I have not experienced that yet, but that is also because my goats are on forage. They have a high quality diet that I am giving them. So their milk just tastes like creamy milk. There's no weird flavor, if you know what I'm saying. Seriously, I love their milk. Huge pro. And again, this is going to come from the diet. But my cow, even though she was on pasture, kind of had a really just strong cow flavor that I didn't love. If you don't have to use any vet grade, pharmaceutical grade dewormer on your animals, I'm all for that. So I guess that's a con for goats, that you have to do that, but it's literally just a powder. I put it on their food. You do it once a week or twice a week for them, their size. It will depend on what kind of animal you have, how much they weigh. These are Nigerian dwarfs, so they are a smaller goat. The bags will last a while. At least for me, I only have 4 goats to deal with at the moment, but I would way rather use that than pharmaceuticals. For breeding your dairy animal, it's going to be pretty similar across the board, whether you rent a male to come onto your property, or you take your girls somewhere, or you can do AI. One thing you just have to be careful for, and this would be across the board, is to make sure that you don't take them to a diseased farm or a diseased herd. You want to make sure that everybody is safe. Again, that would be for your dairy cow or your dairy goats. But the pro with transporting your dairy animal, I think I'd already mentioned this, goats are so much easier to transport. I remember having my dairy cow, and I just, man, thinking about transporting her is already hard enough to herd her. I'm so happy that I didn't have to do that. I absolutely loved her. But as you can see, I am so partial to goats. I am in love. Their maintenance seems to be way easier than having a dairy cow. And I am surprised I'm saying this because I was so bent for a dairy cow last year. I listened to all these podcasts, watched all these videos, and I was like, wow, a dairy cow is right for me. But I really think that people who did not like goats, it was because they didn't have proper fencing, and they could totally be menaces if you didn't have proper fencing and they were getting out and eating everything and making a mess because they are curious. So if you have proper fencing, I think you'll be extremely happy with goats. And I appreciate you guys watching this. I hope this helps you on your decision. I love my goats. I want to get more. I literally started with 2. I have 2 yearlings, and I was like, well, I want to goat and milk. So then I got her and her baby. And now because of biosecurity, I'm going to be getting my own buck, and it just sort of expands. It's kind of like chicken math, but goat math. 10 out of 10 would recommend goats. Love them, easier to manage. You don't need as big of an area. They give you delicious milk. Their milk is amazing. And I appreciate you guys for spending your time here. Don't do anything a Gubba wouldn't do, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.